Man, the prequels suck.
You know, you better be careful what you're saying about the prequels, because you can get bopped in the head real quick.
Actually, we could have got the.
Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here back with another video, and this is going to be another episode of Your Questions Answered. If you're not familiar with it, Your Questions Answered is a Q&A series that I do on this channel. If you want to see one of your questions answered in one of these videos, leave it in the comment section below. Make sure it's Lego Star Wars, or literally anything related, and I'll answer it next week. So check back to see if you make the cut. I want to also give us thanks to Jedi Bob for that intro. George Lucas might have won the battle, but I guarantee you he's not going to win the war. The first question this week comes from RoboNut03. He says, what do you think is the most common mistake made by Star Wars builders when creating MOCs? It's so hard to think of one thing because so many people make MOCs and so many people do like certain things good and certain things bad, but I think there's three things that I notice a lot when looking at MOCs. And by way of mistakes, I think the first thing is just minifig placement, specifically overcrowding your builds with minifigs. It just doesn't look good. Like, it just doesn't look realistic when you have, too many minifigs in your MOC. And I understand the temptation there, and I understand when you have all these figures in your collection, you want to load up your MOC and maybe include as much action as possible. But I think you need to have some restraint in that regard. Like, it just doesn't look like a realistic battle when you're just flooding the MOC with minifigs. So that's one that I think I see super often. A second thing is more specific to vehicle builds, and I would just say it's getting the proportions of the vehicle correct. I understand that oftentimes you can't really be too harsh on people who don't necessarily put in the most amount of detail or have the greatest parts usage, because a lot of times people are just working with the parts they have, and I think that's totally fine. But the proportions of your build, I think, is something you can help regardless of what your parts collection looks like. And I think it probably just comes from people who are building from memory, not necessarily doing their homework with their build insofar as they're not looking at enough reference material. I always tell people, like, building MOCs and vehicles specifically is like building, I don't know, a house or a doghouse or something. You want to measure 10 times and cut once. You don't want to measure once and cut 10 times. And what I mean by that is you want to do your homework. You want to look at as much reference material as possible. That way, when you get started, you're not constantly like seeing pictures of whatever you're trying to build and then being like, oh, I need to correct that. That's not correct. So yeah, I think the proportions of your build is something I see that's just off on vehicles super often. And I don't know, like, honestly, for me, I think a build that is proportioned correctly, that has the right angles and just general shape, I'll take that over a not well proportioned build that has more advanced building techniques. I just feel like the shape of the ship is what really matters. I think that's what's really going to stick out to people who care enough that the vehicle looks like what it should look like. And if your proportions are off, that really just throws off the entire build, regardless of what type of building techniques you're using with your build. A third thing I noticed that isn't really specific to the quality of the build, but instead the presentation of the build, is just the photos people take of their MOCs. I think that the presentation of your build can really determine how it is perceived by people. So, like, if you have even an average build, but you have a decent camera, decent lighting, just a decent looking photo of it, then that does a lot for it to make it just look like a more appealing build. And on the flip side, like, I've seen so many great builds that where the builder just didn't take great photos of it, and that in turn makes the MOC less interesting to look at. Obviously, this isn't an issue if you're going to conventions or anything, but if you're like a builder and you want to build your online presence, if you don't necessarily have the tools to build, super large scale, grand extravagant MOCs, you can set yourself apart from most builders by just having a decent presentation, like a flat background, maybe some interesting effects, just something that makes even just the picture of your MOC appealing to look at. I think you can do to make yourself just different from any other builder. The next question comes from Holja Scatu. He says, who was your favorite character introduced in The Last Jedi? So I have two. The first one is Snoke, and the second one is DJ. I know Snoke was technically not introduced in The Last Jedi, but I would say it's sufficient to describe it that way, at least because The Last Jedi is really where we get to know more about his character. It's like the Emperor Return of the Jedi, right? Like, we hear him talk before then, but we don't really get to experience the essence of his character until Return of the Jedi. So I would still say Snoke in terms of The Last Jedi. I loved him as a character. Honestly, don't think he gets enough credit. It's like people see that he died in the movie and they just assume he was wasted, but they don't actually look at the things he did in the film and give his character credit for that. I love that he was so condescending. Like Snoke was just a total jerk to Kylo Ren, and I loved it because it fueled Kylo's anger, and it ultimately like spearheaded Kylo to want to become the Supreme Leader and kill him in the film. I thought that that all played out pretty perfectly. I also love how unique his character was by way of his force powers. We didn't have to see Snoke with a red lightsaber, thank God. But the things he did, the way he used the force was very unique and it made sense for him. Snoke clearly has been through some things. Snoke's face is pretty messed up. So it made sense that rather than have him, you know, like be this super acrobatic or active character, like the way he uses the force is just so cool and unique to his character, and it makes sense. Like the way he moves people around like chess pieces, like he's this huge guy and he doesn't even have to get up or break a sweat to like totally wreck you, because he's just like moving Rey like, oh, like look out the window, moves her over there, like throws her around the room, you know, like without breaking a sweat. I love that about his character. I really do like the way Snoke was portrayed in that movie, and I like that he died. I thought he served his purpose in the sequel trilogy perfectly. Like he was basically the catalyst to really get Kylo Ren to embrace the dark side, and at least in The Last Jedi, that's exactly what he did. Secondly, I gotta go with DJ. I love the fact that he was basically the devil on Finn's shoulder, whereas Rose was the angel on Finn's shoulder. He was obviously a very sketchy guy. He had some pretty funny lines too. Like I love when he tells Finn, "Let me learn you something big," and the fact that he calls him Big F. That's so funny to me. But yeah, I thought DJ was a very interesting character. I love that he just straight up betrays the main characters, and like he gets called out for it, and he's just like, maybe, and like just goes on about his day. Like that was just so great, you know. Like he was a character that served a purpose, and we moved on from him, and he had a very clear impact on the film, and I really did appreciate that. So I've got to go with Snoke or DJ. Next question comes from Zandy Boy. He says, once you complete your Star Wars minifig wall, would you like to start collecting the entirety of all minifigures from a certain theme? I guessing you mean other than Star Wars. That's a good question. Honestly, probably no. The Star Wars minifig wall journey has been insane, and I'm going to be so excited when I can finish it up and not be just spending so much money on minifigures so often. Like I can just settle back and enjoy my Star Wars minifig wall. There are some other themes that I do like having the minifigs for. Like, I almost have all the Simpsons minifigs. There's like a few I'm missing that I would really want to get. But by way of, you know, going into another theme and just collecting like all the minifigs just for completion's sake, Star Wars is really the only theme in LEGO that I'd feel that way about. Next question comes from Israel K. He says, question, what is the best way to start mock building if you do not have many pieces or have a lack of knowledge of pieces and building in general? There's two things. When I first started building, I was using LDD a lot. That was really just because I didn't have my parts collection at my disposal. I was away at college. But what that meant was I kind of had to learn how to use it. It's a bit of a learning curve, but the benefit to doing this is all the parts are just kind of there in one area. You're not limited by the amount of parts that exist. So like if you want to build something, you basically just have the ability to look at like almost every Lego part ever and get an idea for what's even out there. So I thought using LDD and kind of being forced to just look through the extensive parts catalog was super useful for me becoming better as a builder, because it just gave me a greater knowledge of what parts might exist that I maybe didn't have in my own collection. The second thing, and this is something I tell anyone who just wants to start building something on their own, take a set, take any set, take your favorite set, and try to improve it. Like take a set of something like, I don't know, an X-Wing, and look at photos of an actual X-Wing and just think of ways you can improve that set, and then do it. You know, change some things around, make it more accurate, force yourself to try to accomplish more complex angles that LEGO may have omitted in their design. And I think that's a good way to start with a template, to not just start from nothing, but also give yourself motivation and inspiration to build better than even what LEGO has done. I think that's a great way to start, just getting yourself in the groove of mock building. Next question comes from Fark Bricks. What a name. He says, Jay, if you could have either a UCS Venator, Jedi Temple, or an AT-AT, I'm guessing the question is which one would I choose? So AT-AT, I already have a big AT-AT. I don't need Lego to make one for me. Venator, I mean, that'd be cool. It'd make a cool set, but I don't know, like, Venators, there's so many MOCs of Venators out there, like there's nothing really stopping me from having a big Venator other than just like building whoever's I saw that I liked out there. So I'd say the Jedi Temple. The Jedi Temple has the biggest upside for figures. Like, there's just new Jedis we can get. Zat Ju Kasa. And it's, I think, just be a cool scenery. Lego's never made a Jedi Temple set of any kind, so I think the Jedi Temple is what I would go with here. Next question comes from Vicente Mello. He says, question, why do you refuse to buy the helmet sets? This is a good question. I guess I haven't really talked about this since the video I did. I just refuse to buy them on principle. I don't think they're bad sets. They're just gimmicks, and I like play sets. Like, that is, I think, the essence of Lego Star Wars, and the fact that Lego went an entire wave of Lego Star Wars sets without a single play set just blows my mind. Like, honestly, I'm shocked that that was not a bigger deal than it was, because it's never happened before, right? Like, any other wave we got with Lego Star Wars, there was at least one playset. So to go an entire wave without playsets, I thought was just a departure, an extreme departure for what makes Lego Lego and the things that I like about Lego. So strictly on principle, I am avoiding those helmet sets. And the last question comes from Stormtrooper Lego. He says, what's your favorite scene from episode 9? It's good if you say none of them. I mean, I don't hate everything about episode 9. I haven't watched the movie recently, so I don't remember much from it that I really enjoyed. But I do know that I'd say my favorite scene is either the Pisana speeder chase. I just thought that was a well-executed action scene in Star Wars. I love the banter between the main characters. A lot of people crap on the "they fly now" line. I thought that was totally fine. I got a chuckle out of that whenever they showed that before the film came out. I have literally no problems with that line. I thought it was good. It was funny. But outside of that, I'd probably just say at the end where all the rebels are basically charging the final order on the surface of the Star Destroyer. It's hard to really call that a scene because it's a sequence, you know, like they cut back and forth to it. But I love just that idea, the concept of like the rebels fighting the final order on the surface of a Star Destroyer is just so cool to me. I really did like that. But that's going to finish up the video today, guys. I hope you enjoyed checking out your questions answered. Like I said, leave your questions below in the comment section. You can check back next week to see if I answered them. And that's going to finish things up. If you like what I do, go ahead, support the video by hitting the like button, support the channel by smashing that subscribe button, and I'll be back again very soon.